My name is Amber Mitchell, and at 29 years old, I thought I was past family drama. I was wrong. Last Christmas, I drove 4 hours to my Aunt Patricia's house, arms loaded with carefully wrapped presents. When she opened the door, her face immediately soured. "We don't want you here. Go ruin someone else's holiday," she said loudly. Through the doorway, I could see my entire family gathered around the table, laughing. Something inside me crumbled, but I just nodded. "Got it," I said, turning to leave. 10 minutes later, my dad burst through the front door, yelling my name. Before I continue this story, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear how this holiday nightmare turned into the most important Christmas of my life. I grew up in a small Connecticut town where everyone knew everyone. My childhood home was a modest colonial with blue shutters and a wraparound porch where Dad hung string lights every December. Our family was small but close. My parents, Thomas and Rebecca Mitchell, my younger sister Kayla, and me. Dad worked as an engineer at the local manufacturing plant, while Mom taught second grade at the elementary school. We weren't wealthy, but we had enough. From early on, I had a special bond with my dad. He was the one who encouraged my creativity, buying me sketch pads when I showed interest in drawing and defending my decision to take art classes instead of additional math courses in high school. "She sees the world differently," he'd tell anyone who questioned it. "That's a gift, not a problem." My Aunt Patricia, Dad's older sister by 5 years, never seemed to understand this perspective. She lived in a Victorian house on the affluent side of town with my Uncle Robert and my cousins Emma and Jason. Patricia was the kind of woman who coordinated her holiday decorations with her outfit and judged the value of people by their accomplishments and social connections. "Amber, darling, have you considered straightening your hair? It would look so much more professional," she'd say during family gatherings, touching my curly hair without permission. Or, "Those art classes are a lovely hobby, but you'll need something practical to fall back on." Each comment delivered with a smile that never reached her eyes. When I announced my decision to attend art school in Boston instead of the local community college Patricia had suggested, she made her disapproval clear. "Well, I suppose some people need to learn their lessons the hard way," she said during the family dinner celebrating my acceptance. Dad squeezed my hand under the table while Mom quickly changed the subject. After graduation, Everything changed when Mom was diagnosed with aggressive ovarian cancer. For 18 months, I split my time between Boston and Connecticut, working remotely whenever possible to help with her care. Patricia visited occasionally, always bringing expensive organic food that Mom couldn't eat and offering unsolicited medical advice. "Rebecca should try this specialist in New York," she'd tell Dad, as if he hadn't researched every possible treatment option. My friend Judith's sister had the same thing, and she went to Switzerland for therapy. When Mom passed 3 years ago, something fundamental shifted in our family dynamic. Dad, usually our rock, seemed lost without his partner of 30 years. Kayla, who had just started college, withdrew into herself. Aunt Patricia, sensing the vacuum in leadership, stepped into the role of family matriarch with alarming speed. "Of course Christmas will be at my house this year," she announced at the funeral reception. Thomas and the girls shouldn't have to worry about hosting so soon after Rebecca's passing. That first Christmas without Mom was unbearable. Patricia had removed all of Mom's handmade ornaments from the family collection, claiming they didn't match her silver and blue theme. When I mentioned missing Mom's cranberry Christmas cake, Patricia dismissed it as too sugary anyway. The second Christmas, I made excuses to stay in Boston, claiming a work deadline. The truth was I couldn't face another holiday where Mom's absence was so carefully curated out of existence. I sent gifts and called Dad on Christmas morning, promising to visit soon. Last year, the third Christmas since Mom died, guilt and longing won out over self-preservation. I missed my family. More importantly, I missed the warmth and traditions that had defined our holidays before. Kayla had mentioned that Patricia had been telling everyone I thought I was too good for the family now, and Dad sounded increasingly lonely during our calls. In November, I reached out to my cousins Emma and Jason on Facebook, tentatively rebuilding connections. We shared updates and a few jokes about Patricia's controlling nature. Emma sent photos of her new baby, and Jason told me about his promotion. These interactions gave me hope that perhaps this Christmas could be different. Maybe enough time had passed for wounds to begin healing. My decision to go home for Christmas came after a long call with Dad in early December. "Everyone wants to see you, sweetheart," he said, his voice brightening at my suggestion. It's been too long. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. It never occurred to me that everyone might not include the person hosting the gathering. The first 2 weeks of December were a flurry of preparation. I wanted everything to be perfect for my family reunion. I spent weekends shopping for thoughtful gifts, a vintage fishing lure for Dad that matched one he'd lost from Grandpa's collection, a pair of sapphire earrings for Kayla that complemented her eyes, a handcrafted wooden train for Emma's baby, a limited edition book on classic cars for Jason, and even an expensive scarf for Patricia in her favorite shade of burgundy. For Uncle Robert, who was often overlooked in Patricia's shadow, I found a rare bottle of scotch from the distillery near where he grew up in Scotland. Each gift was wrapped in elegant paper with handwritten notes attached, a far cry from the digital gift cards I'd sent in previous years. The most important preparation, however, was emotional. I called my best friend Lindsay almost daily, rehearsing what I might say when faced with inevitable questions about my absence or comments about my life choices. "Remember, you don't owe anyone explanations about your career or your dating life," Lindsay reminded me during one of these calls. "And I'm on standby for an emergency extraction if you text me the code word peppermint." I laughed, but we both knew the offer wasn't entirely a joke. Lindsay had witnessed the aftermath of too many family encounters that left me drained and questioning my worth. 3 days before Christmas, I spent an entire evening baking Mom's special cranberry cake from her handwritten recipe card. The familiar process of creaming butter and sugar, the tart scent of fresh cranberries, the sticky sweetness of orange glaze each step brought her closer, as if she were standing beside me in my small kitchen, gently correcting my technique. More vanilla, amber. When the cake emerged from the oven, golden and perfect, I carefully packed it in a container that would protect it during the journey. This wasn't just dessert. It was a peace offering, a connection to our shared past, a reminder of who we were before grief splintered us into strangers. The morning of Christmas Eve, I loaded my car with gifts, overnight bag, and Mom's cake. Dad had called the night before, his excitement palpable even through the phone. "The house looks great, kiddo. Patricia's gone all out with the decorations, and Kayla's already here. We can't wait to see you tomorrow." His enthusiasm bolstered my courage, but as I pulled onto the highway, anxiety crept in. I turned up the holiday music to drown out the whispers of doubt. For hours stretched ahead of me, alone with my thoughts and memories. Halfway to Connecticut, snow began to fall light at first, then heavier, slowing traffic and adding an hour to my journey. I took it as a sign to stop at Millie's Diner, a favorite childhood spot just off the interstate. The bell above the door jingled as I entered, and for a moment, I was 10 years old again, sliding into a booth with Mom and Dad after Sunday drives. "Well, look who's come home," Millie herself called from behind the counter, remarkably unchanged despite the passing years. Amber Mitchell, all grown up and citified now. We chatted briefly as I ordered coffee and pie. She asked about Boston, told me about her grandchildren, and never once made me feel that my choice to leave was a betrayal. When I mentioned heading to Patricia's for Christmas, something flickered across her face, concern, perhaps, but she simply squeezed my hand and said, "Your mama would be proud of the woman you've become." Back on the road, fortified by familiar comfort food and unexpected kindness, I checked my phone at a rest stop to find 3 texts from Dad. "How's the drive going? Weather looking rough. Take your time. We'll save you some appetizers. Patricia's made her famous cheese straws. His messages warmed me more than the car's struggling heater. At least one person was genuinely happy about my return. I reached my hometown just as dusk was settling. Christmas lights twinkled from houses along Main Street, and the town square's massive spruce glittered with ornaments. I drove slowly, reacquainting myself with storefronts and landmarks. Some had changed. The old bookstore was now a boutique coffee shop. The hardware store sported a fresh coat of paint, but the essence remained the same. Patricia's house stood at the end of Maple Avenue, a 3-story Victorian with a wraparound porch and gabled roof. Tonight, it was transformed by thousands of white lights outlining every architectural feature, with matching wreaths on each window. Perfect, pristine, and intimidating just like its owner. I parked across the street and sat in my car for 20 minutes, rehearsing what I would say, how I would react to potential barbs or awkward questions. I reapplied my lipstick, adjusted my sweater, and practiced my smile in the rearview mirror. "You belong here," I told my reflection. "This is your family, too." With one deep breath, I gathered the first load of presents and Mom's cake, carefully balancing everything as I approached the front door. Through frosted glass panels, I could see movement and colors, hear laughter and the faint notes of white Christmas playing inside. Patricia's house had always intimidated me. Even as a child, I'd felt out of place among the antique furniture and delicate decorations that were strictly off-limits to small hands. Tonight, the Victorian mansion outdid itself in Christmas splendor. Every window featured an electric candle, and the porch railings were wrapped in fresh pine garlands interwoven with ribbon. A massive wreath hung on the door, adorned with ornaments that perfectly matched the burgundy and gold theme evident through the windows. The sound of laughter from inside mingled with Bing Crosby crooning, "White Christmas." I could pick out Dad's distinctive chuckle, Kayla's higher-pitched giggle, and what sounded like my cousin Jason telling a story. The familiar symphony of family holiday gatherings. I shifted my weight, adjusting the stack of colorfully wrapped packages that threatened to topple from my arms. Beneath them, I cradled the container with Mom's cranberry cake, my peace offering and connection to happier times. The temperature had dropped since I'd left my car, and my fingers were growing numb around the cake container. I pressed the doorbell with my elbow and heard its melodic chime echo inside. For a moment, the laughter paused. Footsteps approached, and I straightened my posture, summoning my most genuine smile. This was it. The moment of reconnection, the beginning of healing our fractured family. The porch light cast Patricia's shadow through the frosted glass panels before the door swung open. She stood framed in the doorway, a picture of holiday elegance in a burgundy cashmere sweater and black slacks, a glass of red wine in her manicured hand. Her expression shifted from neutral expectation to unmistakable disdain as her eyes registered my presence. The transformation was subtle but complete, a slight narrowing of her eyes, a downward turn of her lips, a stiffening of her shoulders. "We don't want you here," she said, her voice deliberately projecting to reach those inside. "Go ruin someone else's holiday." The words hit like a physical blow. My stomach dropped, my face instantly burning despite the December chill. The packages in my arms suddenly felt impossibly heavy. Behind Patricia, through the open doorway, I had a clear view into the warmly lit dining room. The table was set with her best china and crystal, appetizers arranged on silver platters. Around it stood my entire family, Dad examining a cheese board, Sister Kayla laughing at something Cousin Emma had said, Cousin Jason gesturing animatedly while telling a story, Uncle Robert refilling wine glasses. At Patricia's loud declaration, conversations halted. Heads turned toward the door. Some faces registered shock, others discomfort. But what seared into my memory was that several, including Kayla and Cousin Emma, continued laughing, as if my public rejection was merely a momentary interruption to their evening. Patricia remained planted in the doorway, one hand on the frame, physically blocking my entry. The satisfaction in her eyes was unmistakable as she witnessed my shock and hurt. She'd orchestrated this moment perfectly, ensuring I could see everyone inside, ensuring everyone could hear her rejection. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind in the seconds that followed. Confusion, betrayal, questions about what lies Patricia might have told them, anger at my family for allowing this to happen. But externally, I maintained my composure through sheer force of will. "Got it," I said with a deliberate nod, my voice steadier than I felt possible. I turned away with as much dignity as I could muster, careful not to look back even as I heard whispers erupt from inside. The beautifully wrapped packages felt like stones in my arms now. Mom's cake, made with such hope and nostalgia, seemed to grow cold against my chest. The walk back to my car felt endless. I focused on maintaining my posture, putting one foot in front of the other, not running despite every instinct screaming at me to flee. Only when I reached my car did I allow my shoulders to slump, carefully placing the gifts and cake on the passenger seat before sliding behind the wheel. As I closed the car door, sealing myself in privacy, the first tear fell. Then another. And another. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, trying to process what had just happened. Had they known? Had they all sat around the table earlier, discussing Patricia's plan to turn me away? Had Dad's messages of encouragement been part of some elaborate cruel joke? No. I couldn't believe that of him. But where was he when Patricia opened the door? Why hadn't anyone intervened? And most painfully, why had some of them continued laughing? I stared at the house, windows glowing with warm light that no longer promised welcome. Behind those walls was the family I'd driven 4 hours to see, the connection I'd been missing, the reconciliation I'd hoped for. And in 10 seconds, Patricia had shattered it all with a few carefully chosen words. As tears blurred my vision, I remembered the countless times Patricia had subtly undermined me throughout my life. Comments about my appearance, my career choice, my decision to move away. But this public rejection on Christmas was a new level of cruelty that I struggled to comprehend. The full impact of her words settled over me like the snow now collecting on my windshield. "We don't want you here." Not, "I don't want you here." "We." As if she spoke for everyone inside. And no one had contradicted her. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my fingers ached. The first tears had fallen, but now I found myself in that strange, suspended state beyond crying where hurt transforms into a hollow numbness. My breath created small clouds of condensation in the cold car. My mind replayed last Thanksgiving, the last family gathering I'd attended. Patricia had cornered me by the dessert table, wine glass in hand, voice just low enough that only I could hear. "Boston must be treating you well," she'd said, eyeing my new boots. "I suppose the family business wasn't glamorous enough for someone with your aspirations." There was no family business, just Dad's steady engineering job and Mom's teaching career. But Patricia had always created narratives that positioned herself as the keeper of family traditions and me as the ungrateful deserter. Later that same evening, I'd overheard her telling my cousin Emma's husband, "Amber thinks she's too good for us now. Too sophisticated for small-town life." When I'd tried to defend myself, she'd laughed it off as being too sensitive. Now, sitting outside her perfectly decorated house, I wondered how many similar conversations had occurred in my absence. How many times had Patricia poisoned my family against me while I was building my life in Boston? My phone buzzed. Dad had sent 3 texts within the last few minutes. "Where are you? Did you get lost? We're waiting for you before serving dinner." The disconnect between his messages and what had just happened made my head spin. Either he was part of a cruel joke, or he genuinely had no idea what Patricia had done. Before I could decide how to respond, my phone rang. Lindsay's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, just checking in," she said when I answered. "Did you make it? How bad is it so far?" I tried to explain what had happened, but my voice caught on the words. All I managed was, "She wouldn't let me in, Linz. She told me to go ruin someone else's holiday." What? Who would? Everyone was there. I continued, the shock still fresh. They were all laughing. That evil witch, Lindsay hissed. Start your car. You're coming straight to my parents' place. We have plenty of food, and Mom's been asking about you anyway. The offer was tempting. Lindsay's family lived just 2 hours away in Rhode Island, but the thought of another long drive in my emotional state seemed impossible. I think I'll find a hotel, I said. The Holiday Inn by the interstate should have rooms. Text me when you're settled, Lindsay insisted. And Amber? This isn't your fault. Remember that. I ended the call and started my car, the heat slowly coming to life. As I put my hand on the gear shift, planning my retreat, a loud bang startled me. The front door of Patricia's house had been thrown open with such force it hit the wall. My dad burst onto the porch, not wearing a coat despite the snow, his head turning frantically as he scanned the street. When his eyes landed on my car, visible relief washed over his face. He rushed down the path and across the street, slipping slightly on the snow. I could have driven away. For a moment, I considered it. But this was my dad, the man who taught me to ride a bike, who defended my art school dreams, who called every Sunday without fail. He reached my car and tapped on the passenger window, his breath coming in visible puffs. I hesitated, then unlocked the door. He climbed in beside me, bringing a rush of cold air and the faint scent of the cologne I'd given him last Christmas. Without a word, he pulled me into a tight hug. I stayed stiff for a moment before relaxing into his familiar embrace. I had no idea she would do that, he said when he finally pulled back, his voice rough with emotion. Amber, I swear, we've been waiting for you. I was in the bathroom when you arrived. He looked at the presents and cake container on the back seat, then back at me, his face crumpling with understanding. Patricia told everyone you called to say you weren't coming, he continued, anger evident in his usually gentle voice. When I came out and asked where you were, she said you'd texted her that you were running late. Dad, she told me to go away, I said, still processing his revelation. She said nobody wanted me there. And when I looked inside, people were laughing. His face darkened. Jason was telling a story about his boss. Nobody knew what was happening at the door. He ran a hand through his silver hair. When I asked Patricia directly if you'd arrived, she got flustered and said she'd just checked the door and nobody was there. But why would she do that? I asked, although part of me already knew the answer. Dad sighed heavily. There's more going on than you know, Amber. Things have been complicated since your mom died. He looked at me with determination. But we're going to fix this right now. We're going back in there together. I shook my head, the wound still too fresh. I can't face everyone now. Not after that. You can, he insisted, taking my hand. Because you're stronger than Patricia's pettiness. And because I'll be right beside you. His grip tightened. I'm not staying where my daughter isn't welcome. The conviction in his voice gave me pause. Who was laughing, Dad? When she turned me away. His answer would determine everything. Dad's eyes held mine, unwavering and sad. Nobody was laughing at you, Amber. Nobody even knew you were at the door except Patricia. He shifted in the past. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the December night. What do you mean? She's been telling everyone that you refuse to come home for holidays, he said, his voice tight with restrained anger. That you've said you're too busy, too successful for family gatherings now. The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. Dad, I've sent cards, called on holidays. I've literally texted you about visiting and been told that plans were already set. He nodded grimly. I know. But Patricia would say things like, oh, Amber called me. She can't make it again this year. Too much going on in Boston. Or she'd claim you'd told her you found our gatherings provincial now. I would never say that, I protested. I know, sweetheart. I've tried to correct her, but then she'd cry about how I always took your side, how nobody appreciated her efforts to keep the family together after Rebecca died. He looked away, ashamed. Sometimes it was easier to let it go than cause a scene. A terrible suspicion formed in my mind. Is that why Kayla has been so distant? She believes I've been deliberately avoiding everyone. Dad nodded slowly. Until recently. 3 weeks ago, she found emails from you to Patricia from last year ones where you specifically asked about Christmas plans and offered to host at your place in Boston. My breath caught. How did she find those? Patricia asked her to find a recipe in her email. Kayla saw your name and got curious. Dad's expression hardened. Patricia had responded telling you we were all taking a cruise that year. A cruise, Amber. We've never taken a family cruise. The betrayal was staggering. All those missed holidays, growing distance, family bonds slowly unraveling orchestrated by one person's deliberate deception. But why? I whispered. Why would she go to such lengths to keep me away? Dad was quiet for a long moment. Do you remember the lake house? Your mom's family place in Vermont. I nodded. The small cabin had been in Mom's family for generations. We'd spent summers there swimming and fishing, winters skiing and building snowmen. After Mom got sick, we'd stopped going. Your mom left it to you in her will, Dad said simply. Patricia expected it would go to her as the keeper of family traditions. When the lawyer read the will, she was stunned. She cornered me afterward, said Rebecca must have been confused from the medication when she made that decision. Mom left me the lake house. This was the first I'd heard of it. Why didn't you tell me? The lawyer sent paperwork to your apartment, Dad explained. I thought you knew but didn't want to discuss it because of the grief. By the time I realized you hadn't received it, the envelope was returned to the lawyer's office. After sitting in your building's office for months, Patricia had already started spreading her narrative about you abandoning the family. I tried to process this new information. So she's been turning everyone against me because of the lake house. Partly that. Partly she's always been jealous of your talent, your independence, the special bond you had with your mom. Dad ran a hand through his hair. The family's been divided. Some believe Patricia's version. Others suspect she's manipulating everyone. And you? I couldn't help asking. Where do you stand? Pain flashed across his face. I knew tensions were high, but I never imagined Patricia would actually turn you away from the door. I thought having everyone together would help heal things. He reached for my hand. Kayla knows the truth now. She found those emails 3 weeks ago and confronted Patricia, who claimed it was all a misunderstanding. Emma and Jason are confused. TV heard conflicting stories from both sides. And Uncle Robert. Dad's expression soured. Robert follows Patricia's lead. Always has. But even he looked uncomfortable when she was spreading rumors about you last month. He squeezed my hand. After you called about visiting this Christmas, I told everyone you were coming. Patricia couldn't openly object with me there, but she's been tense all week. A piece of the puzzle suddenly fit. The laughter I heard, what was that about? Dad's face darkened. Patricia was telling embarrassing stories about when you were a teenager. That art camp disaster when you were 15. I groaned. The summer I'd accidentally used permanent dye in the communal washing machine, turning everyone's whites pink. Patricia had found it mortifying. Mom had found it hilarious. Jason and Emma were laughing at the story. Dad continued. Kayla was actually defending you, saying it could have happened to anyone. That's what you walked up to. The full picture was becoming clearer. So when you came out of the bathroom and asked where I was, Patricia got flustered, said you must be running late. Then Kayla mentioned seeing headlights outside earlier. When I checked with Patricia directly, she claimed no one had come to the door. Dad's jaw tightened. That's when I knew something was wrong. I went outside to look for you. I sat in silence, processing everything. The years of misunderstandings, the deliberate sabotage of my family relationships, the lake house I hadn't even known was my night was overwhelming. So what now? I finally asked. Dad straightened his shoulders with a determination I recognized from my childhood. Now we go back in there together. No more hiding, no more misunderstandings. His eyes met mine. I'm not spending Christmas without my daughter. And it's time Patricia understood that her manipulations end tonight. I looked toward the house, lights still glowing warmly despite the cold knowledge of what had transpired inside. I don't know if I can face everyone after this. You can, Dad said firmly. Because you've done nothing wrong. And because I'll be right beside you. Something in his unwavering support gave me strength. I thought about the presents in the back seat, chosen with such care and hope. About Mom's cranberry cake, made from her handwritten recipe. Okay, I said, taking a deep breath. Let's do this. Dad and I walked side by side up the snowy path to Patricia's front door, my arms once again loaded with presents, the cranberry cake balanced carefully on top. This time, however, I wasn't approaching with naive hope, but with clear-eyed determination bolstered by my father's presence beside me. Instead of ringing the doorbell, Dad simply opened the door and walked in, holding it wide for me to follow. The warmth of the house enveloped us immediately, along with the scent of roasting turkey and pine garlands. Christmas music still played softly in the background. Patricia emerged from the dining room, wine glass in hand, her practiced smile freezing when she saw me standing beside Dad. Thomas, there you are. We were getting worried. Her voice trailed off as her eyes darted between us, calculating. Were you? Dad's tone was uncharacteristically cold. Worried enough to tell me Amber had called to say she would be late, when in fact she was right outside after you'd turned her away. A hush fell over the house. From the dining room doorway, Kayla appeared, followed by Emma, Jason, and Uncle Robert. Their expressions ranged from confusion to shock as they registered my presence. Patricia immediately, you said, we don't want you here. Go ruin someone else's holiday, I interrupted, my voice steadier than I expected. The dinner plates are still empty, so that was a lie too. I moved past her into the living room, placing my gifts carefully under the Christmas tree and the cake container on a side table. Each movement was deliberate, reclaiming my right to be in this space despite her efforts to exclude me. Amber, is that really what Aunt Patricia said to you? Kayla asked, her face pale with shock. I nodded, meeting my sister's eyes directly. Yes. And then I saw everyone at the table laughing, which Dad explains was during a story about my art camp disaster. Patricia's face flushed red. This is ridiculous. I invited you in, but you were being dramatic as always. Stop. Dad's voice cut through her protestations. Patricia, enough. I've let this go on too long because I wanted peace in the family, but not anymore. Not at the expense of my daughter. Uncle Robert stepped forward, looking uncomfortable but determined to defuse the situation. Let's all calm down and enjoy our Christmas Eve dinner. I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding, Matt. It's not a misunderstanding, Uncle Robert, I said firmly. And before we go any further, I'd like to speak if everyone's willing to listen. The room fell silent. I could feel all eyes on me, Patricia's hostile, Dad's supportive, the others ranging from curious to concerned. I took a deep breath. For years, I've felt increasingly excluded from this family. I blamed myself, thinking my move to Boston had naturally created distance. Now I learned that distance was engineered through deliberate miscommunication. I looked directly at Patricia. You told everyone I refused to come home for holidays when I was actually asking to visit. You told me plans were set without me when that wasn't true. Patricia opened her mouth to protest, but Kayla cut her off. I saw the emails, Aunt Patricia, my sister said, her voice shaking slightly. I saw Amber specifically asking about Christmas plans last year, and you telling her we were all taking a cruise. And the year before that, Dad added, you told me Amber had called you directly to say she was too busy with work to come home. Emma looked confused, but you told us Amber said family gatherings were too provincial for her taste now. You showed us a text. That text was edited, Kayla said. The original was about a provincial cooking class Amber was taking in Boston. I found the full version when I was looking for that recipe. Patricia's face contorted with fury and embarrassment as her carefully constructed narrative crumbled. You were snooping through my private messages? You asked me to find that email, Kayla reminded her. I watched as understanding dawned on my cousins' faces. Jason looked at me with growing horror. Is that why you stopped coming to family events? Because Aunt Patricia made you think we didn't want you here. I nodded. And apparently she made you think I didn't want to be here. Patricia's composure finally shattered. This is absurd. I've done nothing but try to keep this family together after Rebecca died. I've hosted every holiday, coordinated every gathering, while Amber ran off to Boston without looking back. I went to art school, I corrected calmly. And then I built a career, just like Mom and Dad always encouraged me to do. That wasn't abandoning the family. You abandoned the lake house, Patricia snapped, her true grievance finally emerging. That property has been in the family for generations, and Rebecca left it to someone who hasn't set foot there in years. The room went silent again. Uncle Robert looked mortified. Patricia, that's enough. But Patricia was beyond restraint now, years of resentment pouring out. She always favored you, she said, glaring at me. My own sister-in-law left a family property to her niece instead of her sister, who actually cared about family traditions. Mom wasn't your sister-in-law, I said quietly. She was my mother. And she left me the lake house because it was her family's property to leave. Patricia's eyes filled with tears, but they seemed more from frustration than genuine emotion. None of you appreciate what I've done to keep this family together. I've dedicated years to maintaining traditions while you all take me for granted. Dad stepped forward, his expression a mixture of sadness and resolution. Patricia, we've always appreciated your hosting. But keeping the family together isn't about controlling who's included or what information they receive. It's about making sure everyone feels welcome and valued. This is how you repay my hospitality. Patricia's voice rose dramatically. By ganging up on me on Christmas Eve. No one is ganging up on you, I said. We're simply asking for honesty going forward. Family relationships have to be based on truth and respect, not manipulation. Patricia looked around the room, perhaps expecting someone to defend her. When no one did, she turned to her husband. Robert, are you going to let them speak to me this way in my own home? Uncle Robert looked deeply uncomfortable. After a moment of hesitation, he said, Patricia, I think you owe Amber an apology. What you did at the door tonight, that wasn't right. It was perhaps the first time I'd ever seen him contradict her, and Patricia clearly hadn't expected it. Her face crumpled in genuine shock before hardening into indignation. I will not be made the villain in my own home, she declared, placing her wine glass down with excessive force. If you all prefer Amber's version of events, fine. Enjoy your Christmas dinner. With that, she turned and stormed up the stairs. A door slammed somewhere above us, leaving an awkward silence in her wake. After a moment, Cousin Jason cleared his throat. So, should we serve dinner? The tension broke slightly as nervous laughter rippled through the group. I looked at Dad, uncertain about how to proceed in someone else's house after the hostess had dramatically exited. I think that's a good idea, Dad said decisively. Amber, will you help me bring the food to the table? As we moved toward the kitchen, the family gradually shifted into action. Kayla and Emma retrieved plates from the dining room, while Uncle Robert and Jason awkwardly rearranged chairs to accommodate my unexpected presence. In the kitchen, away from the others, Dad pulled me into another hug. I'm proud of you, he whispered. That took courage. Do you think I was too harsh? I asked, suddenly uncertain. No, he said firmly. It was long overdue, and necessary for healing to begin. We carried serving dishes to the table together, and as I took my place between Dad and Kayla, I felt a mixture of emotions, lingering hurt from Patricia's rejection, vindication at having the truth revealed, and cautious hope for the family connections that might now begin to mend. Dinner proceeded without Patricia, initially tense, but gradually warming as conversation tentatively rebuilt bridges that had been damaged by years of misunderstandings. Uncle Robert brought a plate upstairs for his wife, returning with a tight smile but no comment about whether she had accepted it. So, what exactly do you do in Boston? Emma asked, genuinely curious for perhaps the first time. As I described my work as a creative director, I realized how much of my life had been unknown to my family, not because I'd withheld it, but because Patricia had filtered and distorted the information that reached them. "Mom would have loved what you're doing," Kayla said quietly. "She always said you saw the world in colors others missed." This simple observation brought tears to my eyes. "I miss her," I admitted, "especially at Christmas." "That's why you made her cranberry cake," Dad realized, glancing at the container still sitting on the side table. I nodded. "I thought it might help us feel connected to her again." "Let's have it for dessert," Jason suggested. "I haven't tasted that cake since Aunt Rebecca got sick." As the evening progressed, truth by truth, memory by memory, I felt myself reclaiming my place in the family narrative. Not as the deserter Patricia had portrayed, but as Rebecca and Thomas Mitchell's daughter, Kayla's sister, Emma, and Jason's cousin. Complex relationships with their own unique connections independent of Patricia's curated version. When we finally moved to the living room to exchange gifts, I distributed the packages I'd brought with such care and hope. Each person's surprise and genuine appreciation helped heal another small piece of the hurt Patricia had caused. Dad's gift to me was the most unexpected: a wooden box containing Mom's Christmas ornaments, the ones Patricia had deemed not matching her decorating scheme. "I saved them for you," he explained as I ran my fingers over the familiar felt reindeer with the broken antler that Mom had refused to throw away. "I thought you might want them for your own tree someday." As I looked around at my family, imperfect, wounded, but present, I realized that while Patricia had succeeded in keeping me away for several years, she had ultimately failed in her attempt to erase me from the family story. The truth, once spoken aloud, had proven stronger than her manipulations. Patricia remained upstairs for the remainder of the evening, her absence a reminder of the work still to be done. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was truly home for Christmas. The morning after the confrontation, I woke early in the guest room of Patricia's house. Sleeping under her roof had been uncomfortable, but Dad had insisted I stay rather than drive to a hotel. "This is a family Christmas," he'd said firmly. "And your family." I dressed quietly and made my way downstairs, hoping to enjoy a peaceful cup of coffee before others awoke. To my surprise, Patricia was already in the kitchen, meticulously arranging pastries on a silver platter. She glanced up when I entered, her expression carefully neutral. "There's coffee in the pot," she said, her tone neither friendly nor hostile, simply acknowledging my presence. "Thank you," I replied, matching her civility as I poured myself a cup. We moved around each other in awkward silence for several minutes. Patricia didn't apologize for her behavior the previous night, and I didn't demand it. Instead, we established a cold truce, recognizing that some wounds were too fresh for immediate healing. When Dad and the others came downstairs, the day proceeded with a strained politeness. We opened presents, ate breakfast, and participated in the usual Christmas traditions. Patricia played her role as hostess with mechanical efficiency, but the warmth that should have accompanied the holiday was noticeably absent. After breakfast, Uncle Robert quietly approached me while Patricia was occupied in the kitchen. "I should have said something," he admitted, looking ashamed. "When she started spreading stories about you not wanting to visit, I knew something wasn't right." His belated acknowledgement was both vindicating and frustrating. "Why didn't you?" I asked. He sighed heavily. "It was easier not to rock the boat. Patricia has. She has her own struggles." He glanced toward the kitchen. "That doesn't excuse what she did, though." "I'm sorry, Amber." By mid-afternoon, Dad pulled me aside for a private conversation on the porch, despite the cold. "I've been thinking," he said, breath-forming clouds in the winter air. "It's time for a change in how we handle family gatherings." "What do you mean?" "Patricia has hosted everything since your mom died, and we've seen how that's worked out." His expression was determined. "I think we should rotate holidays among different family members going forward. Easter at my place, perhaps Thanksgiving at Kayla's apartment, summer cookouts at the lake house. The lake house, I repeated. Dad, I didn't even know Mom left it to me until yesterday. I know, and that's partly my fault for not following up when the paperwork was returned. He looked genuinely regretful. But now that you know, what do you want to do with it? I considered the question. The small Vermont cabin held so many memories: summer swimming, winter sledding, Mom teaching me to make her cranberry cake in the tiny kitchen. I want to keep it in the family, I said finally. But not as Patricia's domain. As a place where any of us can go to remember Mom and be together without the tension that comes with Patricia controlling everything. Dad nodded, squeezing my shoulder. I think your mom would approve. When we returned inside, Dad called everyone together in the living room. Patricia stood slightly apart, arms crossed defensively. I have an announcement, Dad said. After discussing it with Amber, we've decided to change how we handle family gatherings going forward. He outlined the rotation plan, emphasizing that everyone would take turns hosting different holidays throughout the year. This will share the responsibility and give us all a chance to create our own traditions, he explained. Patricia's face tightened. I see. So my years of effort are being dismissed because of one misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Patricia, Dad said firmly. It was a deliberate attempt to exclude my daughter from family gatherings. And it wasn't just once. Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't argue further. Additionally, Dad continued, Amber has decided to keep the lake house as a family gathering place. She'll be arranging for necessary repairs and updates in the spring. This announcement clearly surprised Patricia, who had perhaps expected me to sell the property out of spite. Her expression flickered with something that might have been relief before settling back into cool reserve. Will you be hosting? Actually, I said, I was thinking of hosting a small get-together at my apartment in Boston next weekend. Nothing fancy, just a chance for anyone who wants to visit to see where I live. I looked around the room. You're all welcome. Kayla immediately brightened. I'd love to come. I've never seen your place. Emma and Jason exchanged glances before Emma said, we could drive up with Kayla. If that's okay? Of course, I said, genuinely pleased. Uncle Robert nodded noncommittally, while Patricia remained silent, her invitation acknowledged, but clearly unwelcome. As the day progressed, individual conversations helped further clear years of misunderstandings. Kayla pulled me into the guest room for a tearful apology. I believed her, she confessed. When Patricia said you thought we were all beneath you now, I was so hurt that I didn't question it, even when it didn't sound like you. I hugged my sister tightly. It's okay. She manipulated all of us. But I should have known better. We're sisters. We are, I agreed. And we're going to rebuild that connection now. Over the following months, I worked to strengthen the relationships that Patricia had tried to sever. Kayla visited my apartment regularly, sometimes bringing Emma along. We established a sisters' weekend tradition, alternating between Boston and Connecticut. Dad and I spoke more openly about Mom, sharing memories and grief that we'd previously kept separate. When spring arrived, we drove to the lake house together to assess what repairs were needed. Standing on the dock where Mom had taught me to fish, I felt her presence more strongly than I had since her death. She'd be proud of you, Dad said, as if reading my thoughts. For fighting for your place in the family. For not letting Patricia's bitterness win. I smiled, watching sunlight dance across the lake. She'd be proud of you too, for finally standing up to your sister. As for Patricia, our relationship remained complicated. She declined my invitation to Boston and made excuses for subsequent family gatherings hosted by others. Uncle Robert attended some without her, growing more comfortable expressing his own opinions in her absence. When Christmas approached again, I sent Patricia a formal invitation to a celebration at the lake house, now renovated and ready for family use. I didn't expect her to accept, but felt it important to keep the door open. To everyone's surprise, she sent a card in response. Not an acceptance, but not a rejection either. Just a brief note acknowledging the invitation and wishing a happy holiday. It was minimal progress, but progress nonetheless. That Christmas at the lake house became everything the previous one had failed to be. Dad hung lights on the porch. Kayla decorated a tree with Mom's old ornaments. Emma brought her baby, now toddling and fascinated by the colorful packages. Jason played carols on the old piano Mom had loved. Lindsay and several of my Boston friends joined us, creating a blend of chosen and biological family that felt right. I made Mom's cranberry cake, this time with Kayla's help, passing the tradition to a new generation. As I looked around at the gathered faces, some related by blood, others by choice, all connected by authentic bonds rather than obligation, I realized that Patricia's rejection, painful as it had been, had ultimately freed us from toxic patterns that had constrained our family for years. The lake outside was frozen, snow falling gently on its surface. Inside, the cabin was warm with laughter and honest conversation. Mom's presence was palpable in the recipes we followed, the ornaments we hung, the stories we shared. My phone rang just after dinner. Dad's name flashed on the screen. "Amber," he said when I answered, stepping onto the porch for privacy. "I wanted to let you know I'm bringing someone to meet you tomorrow. Her name is Ellen. We've been seeing each other for a few months now." The news was unexpected but somehow right. "I can't wait to meet her," I said sincerely. As I ended the call and looked through the window at my assembled family, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for too long. The path to healing hadn't been easy or straightforward, but it had led us here to new traditions built on truth, to relationships based on genuine connection rather than obligation or manipulation. This was what family could be, what it should be. Not perfect, not without complications, but honest in its imperfections and stronger for having faced them together. Have you ever had to confront a family member who was spreading lies about you? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone going through something similar right now. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in difficult family situations. Remember that sometimes the most painful moments can lead to the most meaningful growth. Thank you for listening, and may your holidays be filled with authentic connections and genuine love.